In the cold reaches of the Milky Way, where the stars sparkled like scattered diamonds on a black velvet canvas, a monumental event was unfolding. The Intergalactic Federation of Advanced Species, IFES, had long monitored Earth, a tiny, primitive planet swirling with conflict and contradictions. For centuries, the Federation had debated whether to initiate contact, but the incessant wars, pollution, and seemingly backward nature of humanity had kept them at bay. That is, until the day the delegation of the Zynar Collective decided to intervene. The Zynar were a species of unparalleled intellect, masters of quantum physics and molecular engineering. Their weapons were crafted from photon streams and plasma matrices, capable of disintegrating moons with surgical precision. The notion of warfare among such a species was not barbaric, but rather a calculated, emotionless exercise when absolutely necessary. It baffled them, then, that humans still clung to their primitive projectile-based weaponry, relying on things like bullets, missiles, and swords. To understand why humanity had not embraced more advanced methods of combat, the Zynar dispatched an emissary named Clytex-7. Standing over 8 feet tall, with glimmering silver skin and elongated limbs, Clytex-7 carried the aura of an interstellar scholar. Their assignment was simple: infiltrate Earth's societal systems, gather intelligence on human warfare, and, if deemed appropriate, share the Zynar's advanced weaponry to elevate humanity's civilization. Clytex-7's journey began with meticulous planning. They studied Earth's cultures and histories through intercepted transmissions, poring over broadcasts, films, and historical archives. The more they learned, the more perplexed they became. Humanity had endured countless wars, each more devastating than the last. Yet the technology driving these conflicts seemed to evolve at a snail's pace compared to Zynar standards. For the Zynar, this was akin to watching a civilization repeatedly discover fire without ever inventing electricity. When Clytex-7 finally arrived on Earth, they chose a location that epitomized humanity's paradoxical nature. A military base hidden amidst the sprawling forests of the American Midwest. The base buzzed with activity, soldiers moving with precision as they prepared for training drills. Clytex-7 cloaked themselves in an invisibility shroud, their advanced sensors absorbing every detail of the scene. What they observed was a blend of chaos and order. Soldiers barked commands, their voices sharp against the rhythmic crack of gunfire. Tanks rumbled in the distance, their hulking forms a stark contrast to the sleek, efficient designs of Zynar machinery. Yet, amidst this cacophony, there was an unmistakable sense of purpose. The humans moved with a unity that transcended the inefficiency of their tools. Primitive, yet coordinated, Clytex-7 noted, their voice a soft hum of curiosity. They activated their recording device, capturing the spectacle for analysis. Fascinating, Clytex-7's fascination deepened as they observed the soldiers' rituals. They watched as troops meticulously cleaned their weapons, their hands moving with a reverence that suggested these tools were more than mere instruments of war. Conversations drifted through the air, filled with camaraderie and humor, even as the weight of their duties loomed heavy. The emissary's first direct interaction with humanity came in the form of a holographic transmission. Using the base's communication network, Clytex-7 projected an image of themselves into the command center. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Alarms blared, and soldiers scrambled to respond to the perceived threat. "Do not be alarmed," Clytex-7's hologram announced, their voice calm and measured. "I am Clytex-7 of the Zynar Collective. I come in peace." General Marshall, the base's commanding officer, stared at the hologram with a mixture of suspicion and awe. A grizzled veteran with decades of experience, Marshall was not easily rattled. Yet the sight of an alien emissary in his command center was enough to unsettle even him. "What do you want?" he demanded, his tone brusque. "To understand," Clytex-7 replied, "your species has demonstrated remarkable resilience, yet your methods of warfare remain archaic. The Zynar Collective wishes to learn why and, if possible, to offer assistance." Marshall's eyes narrowed. "Assistance? What kind of assistance?" Clytek 7's hologram flickered as they activated a display of Zynar weaponry. Ethereal devices shimmered in the air, their sleek forms pulsating with energy. Our technology far surpasses anything on your planet. With it, you could eliminate conflict swiftly and efficiently. The general's expression hardened. And what's the price for this assistance? There is no price, Clytek 7 assured him. Only mutual understanding. Why do you cling to outdated weapons when superior alternatives exist? Marshall's laugh was bitter. You think war is just about the tools? You've got a lot to learn. Over the next several hours, Clytek 7 and General Marshall engaged in a tense but enlightening dialogue. The emissary posed questions about humanity's history of conflict, its reluctance to adopt advanced technologies, and its seemingly irrational attachment to tradition. Marshall, for his part, countered with stories of bravery, sacrifice, and the indomitable human spirit. Our weapons might be old, the general admitted, but they've carried us through the worst of times. They're a part of who we are. Clytek 7 listened intently, their analytical minds struggling to reconcile the inefficiency of human warfare with the depth of emotion behind it. For the Zynar, war was a sterile calculation, devoid of sentiment. For humans, it was a crucible that forged bonds, tested resolve, and defined identities. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the base in hues of gold and crimson, Clytek 7 found themselves pondering a question they had never considered before. Could the strength of a civilization lie not in its technology, but in its imperfections? Clytek 7's initial observations of human military practices were merely the tip of the iceberg. After gaining permission from General Marshall to study the base further, the emissary began to delve deeper into the routines, behaviors, and philosophies that shaped the soldiers' approach to warfare. Cloaked in their invisibility shroud, they moved undetected among training grounds, classrooms, and barracks, recording every interaction with meticulous precision. One of the first aspects that struck Clytek 7 was the extensive focus on physical conditioning. Soldiers ran grueling obstacle courses, lifted heavy weights, and engaged in hand-to-hand combat drills. The Zynar found this puzzling. Your weapons rely on projectiles and mechanical operation, they pointed out during a briefing. Why does physical strength matter? Captain Sarah Thompson, a senior officer, replied with a smirk. Because wars aren't fought in a lab. Out there, you need endurance, agility, and mental toughness. If you're not fit, you're a liability. This concept of mental toughness intrigued Clytek 7. The Zynar's advanced technology had eliminated the need for physical exertion in warfare, allowing their species to focus entirely on strategy. Yet here were humans, sweating and straining, pushing themselves to their limits for the sake of preparedness. To the emissary, it seemed inefficient, but they began to sense there was more to it than met the eye. The next revelation came during a classroom session on military history. Soldiers listened intently as an instructor recounted tales of famous battles and the strategies that defined them. Clytek 7 marveled at the detailed analyses of past conflicts, from the trenches of World War I to the asymmetrical warfare of modern insurgencies. The emissary's neural processors struggled to comprehend the human's fixation on history. In Zynar culture, the past was merely data, useful only insofar as it informed future decisions. Why do you invest so much time studying old wars? Clytek 7 asked the instructor, a graying historian named Professor Whitaker. Whitaker adjusted his glasses and replied, because history teaches us about ourselves. Every battle, every war, is a lesson in what we're capable of, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we don't understand our past, we're doomed to repeat it. This emphasis on learning from the past was a foreign concept to Clytek 7. In Zynar society, mistakes were eradicated through advanced algorithms, ensuring that errors were never repeated. But as the emissary listened to the soldiers discuss historical events, they began to see how humanity's willingness to confront its failures was intertwined with its resilience. Another moment of insight came during a live-fire exercise. Soldiers practiced with a variety of weapons, from rifles to rocket launchers, their movements precise and deliberate. Clytex 7 noted the imperfections in their techniques, the occasional misshot, the slight delays in reaction times. Yet what struck them most was the soldiers' camaraderie. They encouraged one another, shared tips, and celebrated small victories together. It was a stark contrast to the solitary efficiency of Zynar warriors, who operated independently under the guidance of AI. You rely heavily on teamwork, Clytex 7 observed during a debriefing session. Wouldn't individual mastery be more effective? Lieutenant Miguel Rivera, a seasoned marksman, shook his head. Teamwork is everything. Out there, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for the person next to you. That's what keeps us alive. This concept of collective responsibility fascinated Clytex 7. The Zynar valued individual achievement and intellectual prowess, but humans seemed to draw strength from their connections to one another. It was an ineffable quality, one that defied the Zynar's logical frameworks. As the weeks passed, Clytex 7's understanding of humanity deepened. They attended a memorial service for a fallen soldier, where mourners shared stories of the deceased's bravery and kindness. They observed soldiers writing letters to loved ones, their words filled with hope and longing. They even participated in a recreational soccer game, struggling to keep up with the players' agility and enthusiasm. Each experience added another layer to the emissary's perception of humanity. What had initially seemed like inefficiency and backwardness began to reveal itself as something more profound. Human warfare, with all its flaws and contradictions, was a reflection of the species itself, resilient, adaptive, and deeply interconnected. By the end of their observation period, Clytex 7 was no longer certain of their mission's objective. The Zynar had sent them to Earth to impart knowledge, but now the emissary wondered if the true purpose was to learn. Humanity's outdated weapons were not merely tools. They were symbols of a deeper truth, a truth that Clytex 7 was only beginning to grasp. Clytex 7's curiosity deepened as they spent more time among the soldiers. The more they observed, the more apparent it became that Earth's approach to warfare was not purely a matter of technology or tactics, but of deeply rooted philosophy and emotion. For the Zynar, warfare was clinical, detached from individual identity. For humans, it was something profoundly different. One day, Clytex 7 witnessed an emotional exchange between a young recruit and an aging veteran. The recruit, Private Jenkins, was struggling with the pressure of training and the weight of responsibility. "Why do we keep doing this?" Jenkins asked, his voice trembling. "Why do we keep fighting wars that take so much from us?" The veteran, Sergeant O'Hara, placed a steady hand on Jenkins' shoulder. "Because sometimes, kid, the fight isn't about you. It's about the ones who can't fight for themselves. It's about making sure the next generation doesn't have to bear the same weight." Clytex 7 recorded the interaction, their advanced minds struggling to reconcile the concept of sacrifice for an ideal, a notion alien to the Zynar. Later, Clytex 7 engaged Sergeant O'Hara in conversation. "Your words to Private Jenkins were insightful. Do all humans fight for others?" O'Hara chuckled. "Not all and not always, but the best of us do. That's what makes it worth it." The Zynar emissary paused. Would it not be more logical to eliminate conflict entirely? "Of course it would," O'Hara replied. "But until that day comes, we've got to fight to protect what matters. And sometimes that means using tools that remind us of the cost." As days turned into weeks, Clytex 7's perspective began to shift. They attended ceremonies honoring fallen soldiers, where families wept and comrades spoke of courage and camaraderie. They read letters written by soldiers on the front lines, filled with love for those waiting at home. These experiences revealed to Clytex 7 that the humans' attachment to their outdated weapons was not born of ignorance, but of a deep connection to their history and values. In one pivotal moment, Clytex 7 observed a training exercise that simulated a high-pressure battle scenario. The soldiers, equipped with their seemingly antiquated weapons, demonstrated remarkable ingenuity and adaptability. They utilized the terrain, coordinated complex strategies, and exhibited a level of teamwork that astonished the Zynar emissary. "Your tools are outdated," Clytex, 7 remarked to General Marshall after the exercise, "but your minds are extraordinary. The unity among your soldiers is a force in itself." Marshall nodded. "That's what you aliens don't get. It's not just about the weapons. It's about the people wielding them. Our strength comes from each other." In time, Clytex 7 began to see the Zynar's technological superiority in a different light. While advanced, their tools lacked the human element that made Earth's warriors so formidable. The Zynar's precision was unmatched, but their methods were devoid of the passion, creativity, and resilience that defined human conflict. Seeking to understand this further, Clytex 7 proposed an experiment, a simulated battle between Zynar technology and human soldiers. The humans, armed with their standard rifles and basic equipment, faced Clytex 7 wielding a cutting-edge Zynar energy weapon. To the emissary's surprise, the humans won decisively. They used unconventional tactics, exploiting terrain, and employing strategies that no algorithm could predict. It was a humbling experience for Clytex 7. After the exercise, Clytex 7 approached Corporal Davis. "I underestimated your kind," the emissary admitted. "Your methods defy logic but achieve results." "How is this possible?" Davis grinned. "That's humanity for you. We're messy, unpredictable, and stubborn as hell. But when it matters, we find a way." Clytex 7's silver skin shimmered as they processed the revelation. They began to see the humans not as primitive beings clinging to outdated tools, but as a species that had mastered the art of perseverance. Their weapons were symbols of their resilience, and their warfare was an extension of their humanity. One crisp morning, Clytex 7 stood atop a hill overlooking the training grounds, their silver skin reflecting the rising sun. The air was heavy with the smell of dew and earth, punctuated by the distant sounds of soldiers sparring. The emissary's time among the humans had challenged everything they believed about warfare, and the final piece of their understanding was about to fall into place. The day's exercise was a simulation of a battle scenario meant to test the soldiers' resolve and resourcefulness. Split into teams, the soldiers maneuvered through the terrain, using their outdated rifles, bayonets, and even makeshift strategies to outwit their opponents. Clytex 7 watched intently, noting the soldiers' creativity and teamwork. One team, pinned down by simulated fire, devised an impromptu plan using smoke grenades and a flanking maneuver. Though rudimentary by Zynar standards, the tactic was ingenious in its simplicity. "What are you thinking?" General Marshall asked, approaching Clytex 7. The general's face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes held the sharpness of someone who had seen and survived countless battles. Clytex 7 hesitated, their normally steady voice tinged with uncertainty. "I am beginning to understand. It is not the weapons themselves, but the human spirit that defines your approach to warfare." Marshall crossed his arms. "Took you long enough. Care to explain what you've learned?" Clytex 7 gestured toward the soldiers. "Your species thrives on challenge and adversity. These outdated weapons force you to innovate, to adapt, to rely on one another. They remind you of the cost of conflict, the weight of every decision. For the Zynar, warfare is a sterile equation. For humans, it is a crucible that forges identity and unity." The general nodded slowly. "And that's why we won't trade our rifles for your plasma cannons. War isn't a game to be won with the best toys. It's a fight for what we believe in." Later that evening, the soldiers gathered around a bonfire to relax after the day's grueling exercises. Laughter and stories filled the air as Clytex 7 sat among them, their imposing forms somehow blending into the camaraderie. A soldier handed them a cup of coffee, and though Clytex 7 had no need for sustenance, they accepted it as a gesture of respect. "Do you regret coming here?" Corporal Davis asked, his voice soft in the crackling firelight. Clytex 7 shook their head. "No. I have learned more in these weeks than in centuries of observing other species. You humans are unique. Unique good or unique bad? Davis teased. Clytex 7's lips curved into what could almost be called a smile. Unique extraordinary. As the stars emerged in the night sky, Clytex 7 made their final report to the Zynar Collective. Humans are not primitive. They are profound. Their reliance on outdated weapons is not a flaw but a testament to their resilience, creativity, and the value they place on struggle and sacrifice. To interfere with their evolution would be to rob them of their essence. The next morning, Clytex 7 prepared to depart. The soldiers gathered to bid them farewell, offering salutes and handshakes. General Marshall stood apart, watching with a mixture of respect and relief. Safe travels, Clytex 7. And if you ever come back, try bringing coffee instead of plasma cannons. Clytex 7 inclined there.